Ciao, it's Pop on YouTube. Today we're going to be looking at one of the most influential horror stories ever written. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This is one of those stories everyone knows the gist of, like the dude has two personalities, ka-chow, kaboom, story over, but I'd never read it, and so I bought a copy of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, it's quite a mouthful, and read it, and yeah, it's pretty good, although I really wish it wasn't so famous, as I really wish I didn't know the twist going in, but whatever, we'll talk about this in the analysis section. Let's just get into it. Also, hold your horses, I took a look at my YouTube analytics the other day and learned that like 50% of my viewers aren't subscribed, so I don't know, it'd be a lot cooler if it was 0% or something. Just putting that out there. Anyway, so this story opens on Mr. Utterson and his cousin Richard Enfield. Not Renfield from Dracula, Enfield. Anyway, Utterson is a filthy blood-sucking lawyer, and he and his cousin are standing across the street from this spooky old house. Enfield says how the other night, while walking home in the middle of the night, he saw this absolute nutter called Edward Hyde just straight up trample a little girl. This man straight up be rolling over kids like a pit bull mauling a toddler. They see me rolling, they hate it. Anyway, Enfield and the lads apprehended Mr. Hyde, who is the sickly, twisted little goblin man, and threatened to ruin his reputation unless he pays the girl and her family £100. So Mr. Hyde took them to the spooky house and goes inside for a bit. He returned with a cheque for £100 to be paid from the accounts of one Dr. Henry Jekyll, which is a client of Mr. Utterson. The cheque works, and so this is immediately pretty sus. So Dr. Henry Jekyll is a very upstanding gentleman, and this is weird because recently the good doctor has also made one Edward Hyde become the sole inheritor of all his stuff should he die or disappear. Mr. Utterson is immediately concerned that one Eddie Hyde is blackmailing Jekyll, and so he sets out to unravel the mystery.
It looks like we have a real mystery on our hands.
So he goes straight to the doctor, but the doctor tells him it's no problem, as he can get rid of Edward Hyde whenever he wants. Anyway, shit hits the fan when another of Utterson's clients gets brutally murdered by Eddie.
Yo, why did you shoot him,
Just
bro?
kill him, bro, yo.
However, at the scene of the crime, they find a bit of a broken cane. The Rosses and Utterson go to the spooky house where Eddie lives and find the other half of the cane, and he realises that he gave this exact same cane to Dr. Henry Jekyll.
Coincidence? I think not!
After this, Eddie Hyde goes missing and Dr. Jekyll says that he's gone forever and goes back to being his usual personable self. However, weird stuff starts to happen a bit later when Henry Jekyll locks himself back up in his manor and says that he won't be seeing anyone anymore. So, a bit later, a mutual friend of Utterson and Jekyll called Lanyon dies of shock after receiving some whack info about the whole Jekyll and Hyde situation. However, before he died, he gave the letter to Utterson and told him not to open it unless Henry Jekyll was dead. Then Utterson gets a visit from Jekyll's butler, who tells him to come on over. He goes over and can hear Eddie in Jekyll's room and tries to break in. By the time he does, he finds a dead Edward Hyde, who has clearly just committed suicide, wearing Dr. Jekyll's clothes. However, Jekyll is nowhere to be found. No body, no nothing. Surprise! They are both the same person. What a twist. If it was the 1800s, that is. Utterson finds a letter from Jekyll, and then decides that he needs to read the one from Lanyon first. He reads an account of how one time Jekyll asked for all this weirdly specific stuff to make a serum out of, and then Edward Hyde showed up to collect it.
Better have my money when I come to collect! Pay up, pay up, pay up!
He then drank it, and to Lanyon's horror, transformed into Henry Jekyll. Utterson then reads Jekyll's letter, which details how he was disturbed by the fact that he had two sets of desires within him, one that was upstanding and moral, and another that was hedonistic and evil. So he found a way, through the power of drugs or something,
I love selling blood!
to literally separate these two parts of him. One remained the upstanding bloke, Dr. Jekyll, and the other became the twisted golem-type figure called Edward Hyde. He found out that he could freely transform himself between the two by drinking his secret stuff, and set off to live a double life. Edward Hyde would go out at night and indulge in all the taboo and hedonistic stuff he could want, and then slink back home, turn into Henry Jekyll, and continue on with their life as if nothing had happened. Jekyll himself would get none of the guilt, and so it was all hunky-dory. He even bought a second house for Hyde to live in, which was the one from the beginning. However, all the shit went wrong when he killed the dude, so he forced himself to go back to being Jekyll full-time. However, he then begins to transform involuntarily into Mr. Hyde sometimes, and the longer Hyde stays away, the more hungry for evil shit he becomes. One day, he wakes up as Hyde, and has run out of the shit to turn himself back, so Hyde writes the note to Lanyon, pretending to be Jekyll, and goes over and sips that juicy juice. However, he cannot find a replacement for the original serum after a while, and becomes aware that the original must have had some kind of impurity that made it work, and that in time he will be forced to become Mr. Hyde permanently. Jekyll wrote this letter, hid it from Hyde, and he was certain that the only thing keeping him back was his fear of Jekyll killing them both by suicide. However, Hyde took permanent control, but realised the game was up when Utterson came a-knocking, and so he decided to kill himself anyway. The end. So this is a book I really wish wasn't so well known. The mystery of Jekyll and Hyde would have been so much better if I didn't know the twist that they were both the same person. I can't hold it against the book, obviously, but yeah. So I really like this book. It's old, but it reads surprisingly well, and is an exceptional horror/mystery story. But what are its themes? Well, this is a really interesting take on the whole human condition. This whole thing is an exploration of human morality. Jekyll is horrified that he is plagued by a dual nature. On one hand, he greatly desires to be an honest, upstanding member of society. However, he also craves these horrible impulses, lusts, and desires. He is so disturbed by the duality of man that he decides he's going to figure out a way to literally separate the two. He tries to separate the good and noble part of himself from the evil, and then live a dual life where none of the guilt and his vices would impact his present day. And he does that. That's what Mr. Hyde is. He is a horrid version of Jekyll that can do all the evil and sinful acts he wants, and then can skulk back home and become Jekyll again. Nobody can track him, and he feels no guilt. It actually reminds me of this exercise one of my teachers did back when I was in school. He basically said that he would wave the stick of no consequences over the class, and in the next 24 hours, there are no negative repercussions for any action we would take. We can steal, kill, loot, murder. Some of those are the same thing, but you get the idea. Anyway, whatever, and nothing bad happens. He then got the whole class to anonymously write down what we would then do given this information, and it was very interesting. But that's what happens here. Hyde is Jekyll's stick of no consequence. Of course, the problem is that Hyde begins to slowly take over Jekyll. The book is saying that evil will become as if we indulge in it. Jekyll realizes that he is just the same as he was before, and Hyde is pure evil, basically saying that good cannot exist without evil, but evil is more powerful and can exist on its own. Jekyll begins to feel guilt and shame, but Hyde only grows more powerful. Quite a deep statement on the nature of good and evil and mankind. We all have both good and evil, but the only way to beat the evil is to choose to live an upstanding and noble life and not give in to the vice. There is no way to eliminate evil from the human, and if you indulge in evil, no matter how unscrupulous you are, it will catch up to you or become you. Overall, 5 out of 5, much better than I thought it would be in all honesty. I just really wish it wasn't so popular so as to preserve the twist, but it is a great exploration of the human condition and our relationship with evil and good. And it's not even that long. This is a very quick read. I would highly recommend it. And if you're interested in books set in grimy cities and discussing, the dual nature of humanity and the human condition, you can check out my novella, Dead Skin Mask. You might enjoy it, you might not. It's all I've got, though. So, yeah.
Buy my book! Buy my book! Before it's too late, people!